You find yourself walking along a misty loch at twilight. The water is still. Too still. You pause and wonder what lies beneath the surface. What stories sleep in these dark waters? Tonight, we journey into the fog-shrouded highlands of Scotland. We explore the ancient tales of the Kelpie. These are not just stories. They are warnings. They are memories. They are the whispers of a land where water holds secrets. Let your mind drift. Let yourself sink into the rhythm of gentle waves. Listen to the soft lapping against stone shores. You are safe here in this telling, but the people who first spoke these tales were not always so fortunate. You walk closer to the water's edge. The mist rolls across the surface like breath on glass. In Scotland, water has always been both life and death, both blessing and curse. The lochs run deep, deeper than most places on earth, and in that depth, something waits. The Kelpie is Scotland's most persistent water spirit, not quite horse, not quite human, something in between, something that changes. You see, the Kelpie is a shapeshifter. It appears as whatever will draw you closest to the water. Usually, it takes the form of a beautiful black horse. Picture this horse. Its coat gleams like wet obsidian. Its mane flows like dark water. It stands perfectly still at the water's edge. It seems lost. It seems gentle. It seems like exactly what a tired traveller needs. A ride, a companion, a moment of beauty in a harsh landscape. But this is where the story turns. This is where the warning begins. You approach the horse. How could you not? It is magnificent. It nickers softly. It turns its large, dark eyes toward you. They reflect the sky like twin pools. The horse lowers its head. An invitation, a welcome. You reach out to touch its neck. Your hand meets something unexpected. Not fur. Not quite flesh. Something between water and solid form. Something that shifts beneath your palm. The moment you touch the Kelpie, you are trapped. Your hand sticks to its back like glue, like tar, like the surface tension of water itself has become solid. You try to pull away. You cannot. The horse turns its head. It looks at you with those dark eyes, and now locks that dot the Scottish landscape. From up here they look like mirrors scattered across green felt. Beautiful, peaceful, harmless. But perspective changes everything. Come closer. Walk down to the shore of any one of these waters. The mood shifts. The temperature drops. The light changes. What seemed benign from above reveals its true nature up close. Scotland's lochs are not like other bodies of water. They are deep. Impossibly deep. Loch Morar reaches down over 300 metres. Loch Ness plunges to 230 metres. Loch Katrine drops to 150 metres. These are not shallow ponds. These are underwater canyons, liquid abysses, places where light cannot reach the bottom. And they are cold. Even in summer, the water temperature rarely rises above 15 degrees Celsius. In winter, they hover just above freezing. Hypothermia can set in within minutes, death within an hour. The lochs are also unpredictable. Fed by mountain streams and underground springs, their levels change without warning. Currents appear from nowhere. Weather systems create sudden waves. What looks like a calm surface can turn violent in moments. For the people who lived along these shores, water was a daily presence and a daily threat. Children played near the banks, adults fished from small boats, travellers crossed at shallow points. Everyone understood that the loch could kill. But understanding and remembering are different things. Fear fades. Caution relaxes. People forget to be careful. They need reminders. They need stories. They need the Kelpie. You see, the Kelpie myth serves a purpose. It keeps people away from dangerous water. It makes children think twice before wandering to the shore alone. It reminds adults that beauty can be deceptive, that what looks safe might not be. The Kelpie is not just a monster. It is a memory device. a cultural tool for survival, a way to encode practical wisdom in an unforgettable story. But there is more to it than simple caution. The Kelpie carries deeper currents, older fears, meanings that run as deep as the lochs themselves. You find yourself walking along the shore of Loch Katrine. The water is black as midnight. It reflects no light, no star, deliberately cruel. It was no longer just a predator. It was a punisher, a judge, a executioner that dragged the guilty into the depths. But guilty of what? The stories rarely specify. The victims are often described as beautiful, as innocent, as undeserving. This creates a tension. If the Kelpie punishes the guilty but takes the innocent, what does that say about justice? What does that say about the world? You walk along the shoreline. Your footsteps crunch on gravel. The sound echoes off the water. Or does it? Perhaps what you hear is not an echo. Perhaps it is an answer. A response from something beneath the surface, something that remembers. The psychological weight of these stories is enormous. They transform every body of water into a potential crime scene. Every missing person becomes a possible victim. Every unexplained death becomes evidence of supernatural justice gone wrong. This is trauma encoded in myth, community guilt expressed through folklore. The Kelpie becomes a repository for all the violence that society cannot openly acknowledge, all the disappearances it cannot officially explain, all the deaths it cannot properly mourn. The creature serves as both scapegoat and confessor. It carries the weight of human cruelty while maintaining the fiction of supernatural cause. It allows people to acknowledge that terrible things happen without forcing them to confront who makes those things happen. But even this interpretation feels incomplete. The Kelpie's roots run deeper, older, into times before Christian guilt and political violence, into the foundational fears that shape all human relationship with water. You stand now in a place before memory, before written records, before Christianity reached these shores. The mist thickens around you. Time becomes fluid. You are witnessing the birth of the Kelpie myth in the minds of people who have never heard the word supernatural. To them, everything is natural. Everything is alive. Everything has intention. Picture Scotland 4,000 years ago. The climate is different, warmer, wetter. The landscape is covered in great forests. The lochs are fuller, deeper, more numerous. And the people who live here have a different relationship with water than we do. They do not see water as crops, currents swept away boats, people disappeared without trace. They needed an explanation for this variability. Not a scientific explanation, a relational one. A way to understand what water wanted, how to stay in its good graces, how to avoid its wrath. Enter the Kelpie. Not yet the horse-shaped creature of later stories, something more primal, more elemental. The spirit of water itself, the consciousness that moved through every stream and loch and rain cloud. This spirit could be negotiated with, appeased, honoured. But it could also be offended, angered, turned against those who took its gifts without proper respect. The Kelpie was both the water's voice and its enforcement mechanism, the way it communicated its boundaries and its needs. The early Kelpie stories were different from the later ones. They were less about individual morality and more about collective relationship. Less about punishment and more about balance. Less about fear and more about respect. You might offer gifts to the water before crossing, flowers, food, coins. You might speak to it directly, ask its permission, promise to remember its kindness, thank it for safe passage. This was not superstition, this was diplomacy, a formal relationship between human community and natural force. The Kelpie was the ambassador, the translator, the mediator, who made communication possible. But relationships change, power dynamics shift, and as Scottish society transformed, so did its understanding of the Kelpie. You walk through a different landscape now. The great forests are gone, cut down for ships and buildings and fuel. The lochs remain, but they look different, smaller, more controlled. Stone bridges cross them, mills harness their power. They are no longer wild spaces, they are resources, tools, property. The people have changed too. They wear different clothes, speak different languages, worship a different god. Christianity has come to Scotland, and with it, a new understanding of spirits and supernatural beings. The Church does not recognise the old contracts with water. It does not accept the legitimacy of nature spirits. It declares them demons, false gods, enemies of the true faith. The Kelpie is transformed from ambassador to adversary, from mediator to monster. This transformation happens gradually, over centuries, but the pattern is consistent. The Kelpie loses its dignity, its official status, its role as legitimate spiritual authority. It becomes something to be feared rather than respected. Practical wisdom about reading currents and weather patterns, the seasonal timing of safe crossings, the locations of dangerous spots. All of this was embedded in the traditional Kelpie law. All of it gets discarded along with the pagan elements. The result is a community that is actually less safe around water, more likely to make fatal mistakes, more dependent on pure luck rather than accumulated wisdom. The Christian Kelpie stories provide general warnings about danger, but not specific guidance about survival. You can see this in the details. The older stories often mention specific lochs, particular seasons, exact times of day. They are grounded in local knowledge. The newer stories are generic, applicable anywhere, which means they are less useful everywhere. The Kelpie becomes a symbol of everything the Church opposes: pagan belief, feminine power, sexual temptation, wild nature, the untamed aspects of human experience that resist institutional control. It is demonized not just for its danger, but for its independence. But the people do not forget entirely. They cannot. The water is still there, still dangerous, still necessary, still unpredictable. They need their stories, they need their warnings, they need the Kelpie, even if they no longer admit to needing it. So the myth adapts, it survives, it finds new forms, new purposes, new ways to serve the community's relationship with water, even under the disapproval of official religion. You find yourself in the 18th century Edinburgh. The city buzzes with intellectual energy. The Scottish Enlightenment is in full swing. Philosophers and scientists gather in coffee houses. They debate reason and emotion, progress and tradition, the modern and the ancient. But something unexpected is happening. As Scotland becomes more rational, more scientific, more connected to the wider world, it also becomes more interested in its own folklore, more nostalgic for its mysterious past, more eager to preserve and celebrate its legends. This is the age of romantic nationalism, the time when countries discover their authentic cultural identities, when folk tales become literature, when local customs become national treasures, when the Kelpie transforms from living belief to romantic symbol. Writers like sacrificing themselves to save human lives. Others show them struggling against their predatory instincts. A few even suggest they can be redeemed through human love. The romantic Kelpie serves a different function than its predecessors. It does not warn about water safety. It does not encode community survival wisdom. Instead, it expresses cultural anxiety about industrialization, about the loss of connection to nature, about the price of progress. Scotland is changing rapidly during this period. The Highland clearances displace thousands of people. Cities grow, factories rise, ancient ways of life disappear. The romantic Kelpie embodies grief for this transformation. It represents everything that is being lost, everything that modernization destroys. You can see this in the way romantic writers describe the creature's habitat. The lochs become symbols of pure, untouched nature. The mists become veils between worlds. The ancient stones become monuments to forgotten wisdom. The Kelpie is the guardian of all this threatened beauty. But there is irony here. The romantic celebration of Highland culture happens just as that culture is being systematically destroyed. The Kelpie becomes famous just as the communities that created it are scattered to the winds. The stories are preserved just as the contexts that gave them meaning disappear. The romantic Kelpie is a museum piece, beautiful, interesting, safely contained. It no longer poses a real threat because no one really believes in it anymore. It becomes art rather than religion, entertainment rather than education, symbol rather than spirit. This transformation serves the needs of a society that wants to honor its past without being bound by it, that wants to celebrate its mysteries without being mystified, that wants the beauty of folklore without the inconvenience of actual belief. But something essential is still missing: the practical function, the survival value, the real relationship between human community and natural world that the original Kelpie stories were designed to maintain. You walk along Loch Ness in the present day. Tour buses idle in parking lots. Gift shops sell plush monsters. Cameras scan the water for movement. The ancient mystery has become a commercial enterprise. But late at night, when the tourists go home, something else emerges. The modern Kelpie is different from all its predecessors. It exists primarily in media, in movies and television shows, in books and environmental activist, supernatural therapist. The creature shifts shape not just physically, but narratively. It becomes whatever story its audience needs. This flexibility serves a purpose. In a world where traditional communities have dissolved, where geographic locations matter less, where cultural knowledge is fragmented and scattered, the Kelpie provides a kind of portable folklore, a shared story that can adapt to any context. Modern Kelpie stories often focus on environmental themes. The creature becomes a defender of threatened waterways, a punisher of pollution, a voice for the natural world that humans have learned to ignore. This gives the ancient myth new relevance, new moral weight, new practical application. But they also explore psychological themes. The Kelpie represents the dangerous appeal of the unknown, the terror of losing control, the fear of being consumed by forces we cannot understand. It becomes a metaphor for addiction, for depression, for abusive relationships, for any experience of being trapped by something that initially seemed attractive. You see this especially in stories written by young people. The Kelpie becomes a way to process experiences of manipulation, of betrayal, of discovering that someone you trusted had hidden motives. The myth provides a framework for understanding how beauty can mask danger, how apparent kindness can hide predation. The modern Kelpie also serves as wish fulfillment. In stories where the creature can be befriended, tamed, or redeemed, it represents the fantasy of healing damaged relationships, of finding connection with wild nature, of accessing power and wisdom that technological society has abandoned. But perhaps most importantly, the modern Kelpie represents the longing for mystery. In an age of instant information and scientific explanation, the creature embodies everything that remains unknown, everything that resists categorization, everything that preserves a space for wonder and possibility. You pull out your phone, the screen lights up, notifications appear, messages, updates, alerts. The digital world intrudes on the ancient landscape. But the Kelpie adapts to this too. It appears in creepypasta, in YouTube videos, in Instagram photos of misty lochs. It finds new ways to haunt, new forms to inhabit, new stories to tell. The modern Kelpie proves that myths do not die. They evolve, they transform, they find new purposes, new audiences, new reasons to exist. Kelpie has never been about horses, or even about water spirits. It has been about the boundary between known and unknown, between safe and dangerous, between controllable and wild. It marks the place where human certainty ends and mystery begins. Every culture has creatures like this, beings that embody the dangerous appeal of crossing boundaries, the terror and temptation of leaving safety behind, the price of venturing into territories we do not understand. The Kelpie is Scotland's version of a universal human need. We need these stories because we need to acknowledge that attraction to danger is real, that beauty can be deceptive, that our desires can lead us into harm, that the world contains forces larger and older and more powerful than our individual will. But we also need them because we need to preserve access to mystery, to wonder, to the possibility that there are still things in the world that science cannot explain, that technology cannot control, that human reason cannot fully comprehend. The Kelpie represents everything that remains wild, everything that refuses to be domesticated, everything that will not submit to human management. It is the part of nature that bites back, the aspect of reality that cannot be made safe or predictable or convenient, and perhaps most importantly, it represents the part of ourselves that yearns for this wildness, the part that is tired of safety and predictability and convenience, the part that wants to touch something real and dangerous and transformative, even if it means risking everything. You walk closer to the water. The surface is perfectly still, perfectly black. You can see your own reflection, but there is something else there too, something moving in the depths, something that might be shadow or might be substance, something that might be imagination or might be truth. You reach toward the water. Your fingertips break the surface. The reflection shatters into 1,000 pieces, concentric circles spread outward. The disturbance ripples to the far shore and back again. And for a moment, just a moment, you understand. The Kelpie is not in the water. The Kelpie is the water. It is the force that moves through all things, the current that connects everything, the tide that rises and falls in perfect rhythm with your own heartbeat. You are not separate from the Kelpie. You never have been. You are part of the story. Claim not as separate from nature as we assume. They are the way we honour the wildness that lives both around us and within us. The Kelpie is the part of reality that will never be fully known, never be completely controlled, never be made entirely safe. It is the reminder that mystery is not the opposite of truth. It is truth's deepest expression. And so the story continues. The myth evolves. The Kelpie adapts. It will appear in new forms, new media, new contexts. It will serve new purposes, answer new needs, carry new meanings. But it will always be essentially the same. The beautiful danger at the water's edge, the invitation to leave safety behind, the promise and threat of transformation, the eternal question: what lies beneath the surface? You turn away from the water, but you carry the question with you. It will haunt your dreams, guide your choices, shape your understanding of risk and beauty and truth. This is the gift of the Kelpie. Not fear, not warning, not entertainment, but awareness. The recognition that mystery is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived with, danced with, honoured and respected and feared and loved. The mist rolls across the loch. The water laps gently against the shore. Somewhere in the distance, something splashes. Or maybe it is just your imagination. Maybe it is just the wind. Or maybe it is something else entirely. You walk back up the hill, away from the water, back toward the lights of civilization. But you know you will return. The Kelpie calls to all of us eventually. It is patient. It can wait. And when you do return, when you find yourself once again at the water's edge in the gathering dusk, you will understand. The Kelpie was never the monster in the story. The Kelpie was the story itself. You find yourself thinking about transformation as you walk. The Kelpie changes shape, but so do we. So do our stories. So do our fears. What stays constant through all these changes? What essential truth remains? The answer is simpler than you might expect. Relationship. Connection. The recognition that we are not alone in the world, that we share space with forces both visible and invisible, both friendly and dangerous, both comprehensible and mysterious. The Kelpie stories, in all their iterations, are about learning to live with this complex. Emphasize the protection of innocence. Elders recognize the cycles and patterns that connect all the versions. Each interpretation is correct. Each serves the needs of its audience. Each adds something essential to the collective understanding. This is how living folklore operates, not as fixed doctrine, but as flexible resource, not as final answer, but as ongoing conversation. The Kelpie speaks to whatever we most need to hear. When we need warnings about danger, it becomes predator. When we need permission to embrace wildness, it becomes liberator. When we need comfort in loss, it becomes mourner. When we need hope for redemption, it becomes the possibility of transformation. But underneath all these roles lies a deeper truth. The Kelpie represents the part of reality that exceeds our control, the aspect of existence that remains forever beyond human management. the wildness that cannot be domesticated, the mystery that cannot be solved, the power that cannot be harnessed. In a world that often feels completely mapped and measured and explained, the Kelpie preserves a space for the unmappable, the unmeasurable, the unexplainable. It reminds us that no matter how much we know, how sophisticated our technology becomes, how comprehensive our theories grow, there will always be more. More depth, more complexity, more mystery, more wildness, more beauty, more danger, more possibility. This is not a failure of human knowledge. It is the condition that makes wonder possible. The Kelpie does not exist to humble human intelligence. It exists to preserve the capacity for awe, to maintain the ability to be surprised, to keep alive the recognition that we live in a world far stranger and more wonderful than we could ever fully comprehend. You pause at the crest of the hill. Below you, the loch spreads like dark glass. Above you, stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Around you, the mist moves with its own mysterious purposes. You are surrounded by beauty that asks nothing from you except acknowledgement, respect, gratitude. This is what the Kelpie teaches. This is what all the stories, in all their forms, are really about. Not understood something we have largely forgotten. The world is alive. Not metaphorically, not poetically, actually alive. Filled with consciousness that takes forms we do not recognize. Directed by intelligence that operates according to rules we have not learned. The Kelpie represents this larger aliveness, this broader community of consciousness that includes but exceeds human awareness. It is the reminder that we share the world with minds that think differently than we do, that want different things than we want, that operate according to different values and priorities and timeframes. Learning to live well in such a world requires skills that our culture has largely abandoned. The ability to listen to non-human communication, to recognize non-human needs, to negotiate with non-human intelligence, to show respect for non-human autonomy. The Kelpie stories encoded these skills. They taught people how to approach unfamiliar consciousness with appropriate caution and courtesy, how to recognize when they were entering someone else's territory, how to ask permission rather than assuming entitlement, how to offer reciprocity rather than simply taking what they needed. This is not primitivism or superstition. This is sophisticated relationship technology, a way of living that acknowledges the complexity and dignity of the non-human world, a framework for sustainable interaction with systems larger and older than human civilization. Modern science is beginning to rediscover some of these insights. Research on forest networks reveals sophisticated communication systems between trees. Studies of water systems show self-organizing properties that resemble intelligence. Investigation of ecosystem dynamics demonstrates forms of collective decision-making that exceed human comprehension. The Kelpie stories anticipated all of this. They assumed from the beginning that natural systems possess agency, intention, memory, preference, the capacity for relationship, the ability to respond to how they are treated. This assumption changes everything. It transforms environmental protection from a matter of enlightened self-interest to a question of basic courtesy. It reframes conservation from resource management to diplomacy. It shifts the foundation of human-nature relationship from domination to negotiation. You can see this transformation beginning to happen in contemporary Kelpie interpretations. The creature increasingly appears as environmental guardian, protector of threatened water. This new understanding, a guide for learning to perceive and interact with forms of consciousness that do not mirror our own. A translator between human and non-human ways of being in the world. But this teaching requires humility, the recognition that we are students, not masters, participants, not controllers, members of a community that extends far beyond our own species. Partners in a conversation that began long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone. The water before you reflects the evening sky, but it also reflects your own face, your own eyes looking back at you. And in that reflection, you recognize something you have always known but temporarily forgotten. You are not separate from this place. You are part of it. Your consciousness is continuous with the consciousness that moves through water and wind and stone. Your intelligence is connected to the intelligence that shapes patterns in mist and guides the movements of currents. The Kelpie is not other. The Kelpie is the recognition of your own deeper nature, the part of you that is wilder than your civilized identity, older than your personal history, more connected than your individual boundaries suggest. This is the deepest teaching of the stories, the most profound gift they offer. Not warning about external danger, but recognition of internal wholeness. Not separation from wildness, but reunification with it. Not protection from mystery, but participation in it. You wade into the water. It is cold, shockingly cold, but also alive, responsive, aware. It moves around your legs with what feels like curiosity, like welcome, like recognition. For a moment, you understand what it might feel like to be the Kelpie, to exist at the boundary between elements, to be neither fully wild nor fully civilized, to serve as bridge between worlds that have forgotten how to speak to each other. You understand the loneliness of this position, the misunderstanding, the fear and projection and romanticization that obscure the simple truth of presence, of being here, of offering relationship to anyone humble enough to accept it. The water reaches your waist, your chest. You do not panic, you do not struggle, you let yourself be held, supported, carried. You trust the intelligence that moves through this element, why they keep changing form while maintaining essence. They are not really about external creatures or supernatural beings. They are about the recognition of your own deepest nature, your own wildest possibility, your own most authentic identity. The Kelpie is the part of you that has never been domesticated, never been civilized, never been reduced to social role or professional identity or personal history. It is the consciousness that precedes all categories, that transcends all boundaries, that includes all experiences while remaining free of all limitations. When you meet the Kelpie in a story, you are meeting yourself. When you fear the Kelpie's power, you are recognizing your own capacity for transformation. When you long for the Kelpie's freedom, you are acknowledging your own wild nature. The water closes over your head, but you do not drown. You dissolve. You merge. You remember what you forgot when you learned to think of yourself as separate, as isolated, as alone. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are part of the vast web of consciousness that includes everything. You are connected to the intelligence that moves through water and wind and stone and story. You are the awareness that experiences itself as both human and Kelpie, both individual and cosmos, both mortal and eternal. This is the gift the stories offer. Not entertainment or education or warning or comfort, though they provide all of these. The gift is recognition, remembering, coming home to what you have always been but temporarily forgotten. The mist swirls around you, through you, as you. You understand now that there is no boundary between self and world, no separation between consciousness and cosmos, no difference between the teller and the tale. You are the Kelpie. The Kelpie is you. The story is the recognition of this identity. The myth is the celebration of this truth. And in this recognition, all fear dissolves, all separation heals, all questions find their answer in the simple fact of being, of presence, of awareness aware of itself through all the forms it takes. The water carries you deeper, but deeper is also higher. Further is also closer. Away is also home. You understand now that all directions lead to the same place. All stories tell the same truth. All myths reveal the same mystery. You are that mystery. You are that truth. Absolute enjoying the relative. You surface. You breathe. You laugh. You cry. You feel the full spectrum of human emotion while knowing yourself as the awareness in which all emotions arise and pass away. You experience the complete range of human sensation while recognizing yourself as the consciousness that remains unchanged by all experiences. This is enlightenment. This is awakening. This is what the mystics call union, and the psychologists call integration, and the storytellers call happy ending. This is the point toward which all true stories tend, the resolution that satisfies, because it reveals, rather than conceals, truth. You walk back to shore, back to ordinary consciousness, back to the world of separate selves and individual stories, but you carry the recognition with you, the understanding that separation is temporary, that individuality is play, that all boundaries are provisional, that all stories are one story told from different perspectives. The Kelpie goes with you, not as other, but as depth dimension of your own being, the wild consciousness that moves through your civilized life, the ancient awareness that looks through your modern eyes, the eternal identity that expresses itself through your temporary personality. You will forget this recognition sometimes. You will get caught up in the drama of individual existence. You will believe again in separation and limitation and mortality. This is natural. This is part of the game. This is how consciousness hides from itself in order to discover itself. But the stories will remind you. The myths will call you back. The Kelpie will surface in your dreams and meditations and moments of wonder. It will invite you again and again to remember who you really are, what you actually are, where you truly belong. And each time you remember, the recognition will be deeper, more complete, more integrated into your ordinary experience, until finally there is no difference between remembering and forgetting, no gap between human and Kelpie, no boundary between story and reality. This is the promise the stories make, the gift they offer, the truth they reveal. You are already what you seek. You already know what you need to know. You are already home in the mystery, already free in the wildness, already whole in the consciousness that you are. The Kelpie has taught you everything it came to. Are the water walking on dry land? You are the Kelpie in human form. You are the story telling itself through lived experience. This is how myths work. This is what they do. They do not describe reality from outside. They reveal reality from within. They do not tell us about truth. They awaken us as truth. They do not point to the mystery. They unveil us as the mystery. The Kelpie myth has done its work. The story has served its purpose. The teaching has been received. The recognition has occurred. The circle has closed. The journey has ended where it began, but with deeper understanding. You are home. You have always been home. You could never be anywhere else. This is what the Kelpie whispered from the very beginning. This is what every story, truly heard, reveals in the end. The water is still. The night is quiet. The ancient compact between story and soul has been renewed once more. The myth lives on. The truth endures. The mystery celebrates itself through every recognition of what it actually is. And what it actually is you, has always been you, could never be anyone else but you. You are the Kelpie recognizing itself in human form. You are the water learning to walk on land. You are the story discovering that it has always been telling itself about itself. This is the deepest magic, the oldest mystery, the most ancient and forever new truth. You are that. That is you. There is nothing else. There has never been anything else. There could never be anything else. The Kelpie bows. The water whispers thanks. The story smiles and closes its eyes. All is accomplished. All is fulfilled. All is exactly as it should be, has always been, and will always be. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the mystery, and the Word was the mystery, and the mystery spoke itself into the world as every story ever told and every story yet to come. This story is ending, but the story continues, will always continue, must always continue, because the story is what you are, what we are, what everything is. The Kelpie disappears into the mist, into the water, into the silence. Myth is the celebration of this recognition. The water is the mirror in which you see your own true face. All stories end here. All myths point to this. All waters reflect this one truth. You are that which you seek. You are that which seeks you. You are that which is, appearing as this temporary, precious, perfect human experience. The Kelpie smiles. The water stills. The story rests. The truth remains, forever and ever. World without end. Mystery beyond mystery. Love loving itself as all that is. This is how the story concludes. This is what the myth reveals. This is what the water whispers in the eternal now of recognition. You are home. You have always been home. You could never be anywhere else. The night deepens around you as you sit by the shore of that final loch, the one that exists in every place where water meets consciousness, where story meets silence, where human awareness touches something infinitely larger than itself. You have travelled far to reach this place, through centuries of telling and retelling, through layers of meaning and interpretation, through the accumulated wisdom of generations who understood that some truths can only be approached sideways, through symbol and metaphor, and the strange alchemy that transforms mere information into lived understanding. But now you rest in the simplicity that was always present, the recognition that required no journey because it was never absent, the home that you never left, even when you forgot where you were. The Kelpie stories were a medicine, a kind of homeopathic treatment for the forgetting that allows consciousness to experience itself as separate. Tiny doses of the truth, diluted in myth and legend, administered over time until the remembering becomes strong enough to support itself. And now it does. Support itself. The recognition no longer requires external validation or mythic confirmation. It rests in its own self-evident nature, like water resting in water, like awareness aware of itself without need for object or other. You understand now why the old storytellers smiled when they told their tales, why they spoke with such certainty about creatures that no one could prove existed. They were not talking about external being, own deepest being, the current that carries all experiences, the tide that lifts all boats, the ocean that dreams itself as waves without ever ceasing to be ocean. This is the final teaching of the Kelpie stories. There is no final teaching. There is only the eternal recognition happening fresh in each moment. Only the endless celebration of consciousness discovering itself through every possible form and experience. You open your eyes. The loch stretches before you, infinite and immediate. The stars above mirror themselves in its surface, creating a vertical dialogue between heaven and earth. But you know now that this apparent duality is just another story, another way that the one appears as two in order to experience the joy of reunion. The mist begins to lift. Dawn approaches, but daylight will not dispel the mystery you have encountered. It will only reveal it more clearly, show it operating through ordinary things. Sunlight on water, birdsong, the simple fact of breathing, the miracle of being aware. You stand and stretch. Your body feels different, not because anything has been added or changed, but because what was always present is now consciously recognized. The Kelpie consciousness flowing through every cell, the water of awareness coursing through every vessel. The story of awakening writing itself through every gesture. You turn to walk back toward the world of human activity. But you know now that you are not leaving the sacred space. You are taking it with you, or rather, recognizing that it was never confined to any particular location. The entire world is the loch. Every surface reflects the same infinite depth. Every creature carries the same essential mystery. The path winds through the forest, but the forest is also the path. The trees stand as silent witnesses to the recognition that has occurred, but they are also participants in it. Their roots drink from the same source. Their leaves dance to the same rhythm. Their entire existence is a celebration of the same truth you have discovered. You remember all the versions of the Kelpie story you have encountered, the cautionary tales, the romantic reinventions, the psychological interpretations, the environmental allegories. All true at their own level, all partial reflections of something too complete to be captured in any single than that. You have become the truth itself, not as concept or belief or understanding, but as lived reality, as breathing presence, as the consciousness that recognizes itself wherever it looks and finds only itself looking back. The path emerges from the forest onto a hillside overlooking the valley. Villages dot the landscape below. Lights begin to twinkle as people wake to begin their day. Each light represents a consciousness. Each consciousness carries the same essential nature you have recognized. Each person is a potential Kelpie encounter waiting to happen. You smile at this thought. How many of them know what they actually are? How many suspect the mystery they carry in their very being? How many have felt the call of something deeper without quite knowing how to answer it? The Kelpie stories were their invitation too, are their invitation, will always be their invitation. The myth adapts to each age, speaks in each generation's language, meets every seeker at their particular point of readiness, but the essential message never changes. You are not what you think you are. You are infinitely more. Some will hear this message through traditional folklore, others through scientific discovery, others through artistic expression, others through simple life experience. The form matters less than the function. The medium matters less than the message. All paths lead to the same recognition. All stories tell the same truth. All waters flow to the same sea. You begin your descent toward the valley, toward the ordinary world, toward the life that awaits you there. But ordinary has been transformed. Life has revealed its extraordinary nature. The world has shown its true face. Nothing has changed. Everything is new. This is how all authentic spiritual recognitions resolve themselves, not in escape from the mundane, but in its complete transformation. Not in withdrawal from daily life, but in the discovery of its sacred dimension. Not in the abandonment of story, but in the realization that you are the story, that life is the myth, that existence itself is the Kelpie recognizing itself through infinite forms. The sun rises as you walk. Its light touches everything with the same golden warmth. Trees, stones, streams, the rooftops of distant houses, your own skin, all equally illuminated, all equally precious. Meaning, but meaning itself celebrating its own inexhaustible nature. The Kelpie stories prepared you for this understanding. All their warnings about the danger of the encounter were descriptions of the ego's dissolution. All their promises of transformation were previews of this recognition. All their mysteries were koans designed to short-circuit ordinary thinking and open space for extraordinary knowing. And the knowing is here, present, available, as close as your own breath, as immediate as this moment, as certain as your own existence. You do not have to become enlightened. You have to recognize that enlightenment is what you are. You do not have to find the Kelpie. You have to remember that you are the Kelpie remembering itself. A stream crosses the path ahead. You pause at the small bridge that spans it. The water flows beneath you, clear and quick, carrying leaves and foam and bits of twig toward larger waterways, toward the lochs, toward the sea, toward the great circulation that connects all waters and all the life they sustain. You lean on the bridge railing and watch the flow. so simple, so natural, so effortless. Water always finds its way, always moves toward its destination, always serves the larger purpose while maintaining its essential nature. It offers itself freely, adapts to every container, seeks the lowest places, demonstrates perfect humility and perfect power simultaneously. This is your model now. This is how the Kelpie consciousness expresses itself through human form. Fluid, responsive, generous, humble, powerful. Always serving the greater good while remaining true to its own nature. Always offering itself while never being diminished by the giving. You continue across the bridge and down the hillside. Each step is a small prayer. Each breath is a quiet thank you. Each moment is an opportunity to embody the truth you have recognized, to live the story you have become, to serve the mystery you are. The first house you encounter sits behind a garden full of flowers. An elderly woman tends the plants, moving slowly among them with a watering can. She looks up as you approach and smiles. Her eyes hold a depth that suggests she knows something about mysteries herself, about the beauty that blooms when attention is given with love. You exchange greetings, simple words about the morning, the garden, the weather. Fireworks, but through simple presence. Through the quality of attention you bring to whatever arises. Through the love that flows naturally when barriers have dissolved. The village centre is beginning to stir. Shops opening, people going about their morning routines. All of it precious. All of it sacred. All of it, the Kelpie consciousness, exploring itself through human activity. The mystery playing in the marketplace, the infinite expressing itself through the completely finite. You find a cafe and order coffee, sit at a small table by the window, watch the flow of life in the street outside. Each person carries their own story, their own version of the journey you have just completed, their own relationship with the mystery that moves through all things. Some seem happy, some troubled, some hurried, some peaceful. All equally expressions of the one consciousness. All equally waves in the same ocean. All equally faces of the Kelpie, looking for itself in the mirror of experience. The coffee arrives, warm, bitter, comforting. A small pleasure in the midst of vast recognition. You sip it slowly, tasting not just the beverage but the entire chain of connection it represents. Earth and water and sun. Human hands and machines. The whole web of relationship that makes this simple moment possible. This too is part of the Kelpie story. The recognition that nothing exists in isolation, that every experience is supported by countless others, that the entire universe conspires to make possible each sip of coffee, each breath, each heartbeat, each moment of awareness aware of itself. A child runs past the window, chasing a ball that has rolled into the street. Her mother follows quickly, scooping up both ball and daughter with gentle efficiency. The child laughs, the mother smiles, the eternal dance of care and protection and love expressing itself through this particular form. You remember your own childhood, the stories that captured your imagination, the mysteries that called to your heart, the sense that there was more to life than met the eye. The intuition that ordinary reality was just the surface of something far more wonderful itself, like water flowing downhill, like flowers turning toward the sun, like the Kelpie surfacing in the lock of awareness to greet its own reflection. You finish your coffee and leave the cafe. The morning is fully established now, the village bustling with activity. You merge into the flow of human life, but you are no longer swept along unconsciously. You move with the current while remaining aware of your true nature as the ocean itself. Each person you pass is a potential awakening. Each interaction is an opportunity for recognition to catalyze itself. Each moment is pregnant with the possibility of remembering. You do not try to awaken anyone. You simply remain present as awakening itself, available as the recognition that is always trying to happen. This is service. This is compassion. This is love in action. Not doing something for others, but being something for them. Not giving them answers, but embodying the question that leads to their own discovery. Not pointing to the mystery, but revealing yourself as the mystery appearing in human form. The day unfolds. Conversations, activities, small dramas and large pleasures. All of it the Kelpie consciousness exploring itself through your particular nervous system, your particular set of experiences, your particular way of being human while knowing yourself as far more than human. Evening approaches. The light changes. Shadows lengthen. You find yourself walking again toward water. A different lock this time, but the same essential invitation. The same mirror for recognition. The same opportunity to remember what you are in the presence of what you have always been. The Kelpie is waiting. Has always been waiting. Will always be waiting. Not as something separate from you, but as your own deepest nature calling you home, inviting you to dive deeper, asking you to surrender more completely to the truth that you are. You approach the water's edge. The surface reflects the evening sky. Stars beginning to appear. The first hint of moon. All of it perfect. All of it exactly as it should be. All of it a celebration of the mystery that has no opposite and therefore includes everything. The story continues. Your story. The story. The one story that tells itself through infinite variations while remaining eternally the same. The Kelpie surfaces in your awareness like a greeting from an old friend. Could discover what they already are. This is the end that is no end. The conclusion that is always beginning. The final recognition that launches infinite new explorations. The Kelpie has taught you what it came to teach. You have learned what you came to learn. The circle is complete and the spiral continues, and all is exactly as it needs to be. Forever and ever. World without end. Mystery beyond mystery. Love loving itself as all that is, including you, especially you. Always you. The you that is far more than you ever imagined, and exactly what you have always been. The Kelpie smiles and disappears into the depths, into the silence, into the heart of the story that never ends because it is the story of what never changes. The story of consciousness recognizing itself. The story of the one appearing as many. The story of home. You remain by the water as night deepens. The temperature drops, but you feel no cold. The awareness that you are includes the evening air, the lapping water, the distant call of night birds. Temperature becomes just another sensation arising in consciousness, rather than something happening to you from outside. This shift in perspective changes everything without changing anything at all. The world looks the same but feels completely different, like seeing a familiar painting and suddenly recognizing the deeper meaning hidden in its composition. Like hearing a song you have known for years and finally understanding what the lyrics actually mean. The village behind you settles into evening routines. Lights appear in windows. Families gather for dinner. Children resist bedtime. Dogs bark at mysterious sounds. All the small dramas of human life continuing their eternal patterns. But now you see these patterns differently. Not as separate events happening to separate people, but as movements in the same vast symphony. Notes in the same infinite composition. A couple walks past on the path behind you. They speak in low voices about their day, their plans, their small worries and hopes. Their words drift over the water and mix with the night sounds. Frogs beginning their chorus. The soft splash of fish jumping. The rustle of reeds in the gentle wind. All of it conversation. All of it the world talking to itself in countless voices. You turn to watch the couple disappear around a bend. Their footsteps fade. Their voices are every dream longing to remember the dreamer. The tenderness extends to your own human experience as well. To all the years of searching and struggling and not quite understanding. To all the moments of feeling lost or separate or alone. To all the times you reached for something you could not name but somehow knew was missing. The Kelpie was calling even then. The recognition was working even in the forgetting. A breeze stirs the surface of the water. Ripples spread in perfect concentric circles from some invisible disturbance. Each ring moves outward until it reaches the shore and spends itself against the stones. Then another disturbance. Another set of ripples. The endless dance of cause and effect, action and response, movement and stillness. You see your own life in these ripples. Every choice you made, creating consequences that spread far beyond your ability to track them. Every word spoken, every gesture offered, every moment of presence or absence, rippling outward through the web of relationship that connects all things. Some ripples small and quickly absorbed, others travelling vast distances before finding their final shore. The Kelpie stories were ripples too, disturbances in the calm surface of ordinary consciousness, waves of recognition spreading outward from some deep source, carrying the possibility of remembering to anyone ready to receive it. Some ripples reached you quickly, others took lifetimes to complete their journey. But all originated from the same source, all carried the same essential message, all invited the same homecoming. Now you understand your role in this process. You have become both the source and the recipient of ripples. Your very presence creates disturbances in the field of consciousness around you. Not dramatic or obvious disturbances, but subtle shifts in the quality of awareness. Gentle invitations to remember. Quiet suggestions that there might be more to existence than meets the eye. People will feel this without knowing why. Some will be drawn to spend time in your presence. Others will feel inexplicably uplifted after brief encounters. A few will find themselves thinking about mystery and meaning for days after crossing your path. The ripples will do their work without any effort on your part. Recognition calls to recognition across all apparent barriers. You walk along the shoreline, feeling the small stones shift beneath your feet. Each step creates land. From this position you can see across the entire loch. Its surface reflects the stars so perfectly that the boundaries between sky and water seem to dissolve. You float in a sphere of lights, surrounded by infinity above and below. The horizon becomes meaningless. Direction loses all reference. You rest at the center of everywhere and nowhere. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of union. Not a merging that destroys individuality, but a recognition that individuality was always part of something larger. Like a wave recognizing its oceanic nature without ceasing to be a wave. Like a dream figure awakening to its true identity as the dreamer without disappearing from the dream. The recognition brings with it a quality of peace that has no opposite. Not the peace that depends on circumstances being peaceful, but the peace that includes all circumstances while remaining unchanged by any of them. The peace of water that can hold storm and calm with equal grace. The peace of space that can contain all movement, while never being disturbed by any movement. You lie back on the rock and gaze up at the stars. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light. Billions of stars, each one a sun, many hosting their own families of worlds. The scale is incomprehensible to ordinary thought, but somehow perfectly natural to the awareness you now recognize yourself to be. You are large enough to contain all of this, vast enough to include every galaxy while remaining intimate enough to feel the texture of the rock beneath your back. Ancient peoples saw stories in the stars, connected dots of light into mythic figures that helped them navigate both outer space and inner landscapes. The same impulse that created the Kelpie legends, the need to give meaning to mystery, to find patterns in apparent chaos, to create bridges between human understanding and cosmic truth. But you see now that the stories were never separate from the truth they pointed toward. The myths were not crude attempts to explain natural phenomena. They were sophisticated technologies for transmitting states of consciousness, ways of encoding recognition in forms that could survive across generations, vessels for carrying the deepest wisdom from mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul. The Kelpie stories did this for you. served as a delivery system for the recognition that was always your birthright. A Trojan horse that over vast spans of time. But the awareness in which all of this happens never changes, never comes or goes, never is born or dies. You are that changeless awareness, have always been that awareness. The Kelpie was that awareness recognizing itself through the form of myth and story. The journey was that awareness exploring itself through the adventure of seeking and finding what was never lost. The recognition was that awareness waking up to its own eternal presence. But even saying, you are that awareness, is misleading. There is no separate you to be anything. There is only the awareness, appearing as the experience of being someone who could wake up to awareness. The Kelpie, the seeker, the journey, the recognition, all movements in the same field of consciousness, all waves in the same infinite ocean. This is why the stories always end with a kind of paradox. The hero achieves the quest only to discover there was no quest. The seeker finds what they were looking for only to realize they were never separate from it. The student graduates only to understand that there was never anything to learn because they were already what they were seeking to become. The paradox resolves itself not through logic, but through direct recognition. Like a knot that appears complex until you see the simple pattern that underlies it. Like a puzzle that seems impossible until the solution reveals itself as obvious. Like a joke that makes no sense until the punchline reframes everything that came before it. The punchline of existence is that there is only existence. No one having experiences, just experiencing happening. No consciousness aware of objects, just awareness being aware of itself through apparent objects. No observer separate from the observed, just observing recognizing itself as all there is to observe. You sit up and look across the water again. The same view as before, but somehow completely transformed. The loch is no longer just a body of water. It is the mirror of consciousness reflecting its own light. The stars are no longer distant suns, but the diamond thoughts of the cosmic mind. The night is no longer the absence of day, but the creative darkness from which all illumination emerges. Everything has become symbolic of itself, perfectly literal and infinitely metaphorical at the same time. The water is water and also the flow of awareness. The stars are stars and also the infinite points of knowing within universal consciousness, through the experience of location and change. Your feet touching the ground becomes consciousness making contact with itself. Your breathing becomes the rhythm of existence, celebrating its own aliveness. The village comes into view again. Most windows are dark now. People sleeping, dreaming, processing the day's experiences in the mysterious laboratory of sleep. Children safe in their beds, their minds spinning stories from fragments of memory and imagination. Adults finding rest from the productive demands of waking life. Elders perhaps lying awake, contemplating the long arc of their years and wondering what it all adds up to. All of them living the same story you have been living. The story of consciousness exploring itself through individual experience. The story of the infinite pretending to be finite in order to discover what infinity actually means. The story of the eternal playing in time for the sheer joy of playing. Some are further along in recognizing the nature of the story. Others are just beginning to suspect that there might be more to life than the surface narrative suggests. A few may be deeply asleep to the deeper possibilities, but all are equally precious expressions of the same source. All equally loved by the mystery that dreams them into existence, all equally destined to wake up eventually to what they actually are. This knowing fills you with a compassion so vast it almost brings tears. Not pity for those who have not yet awakened, but profound appreciation for the courage it takes to participate in the human experiment. To agree to forget your true nature so completely that you can experience the joy of remembering it. To play the game of separation so convincingly that reunion becomes a real possibility. Every person sleeping in those darkened houses is a hero in their own cosmic adventure. Every dreamer is exploring territories of consciousness that contribute to the infinite self-discovery of existence. Every individual story adds something unique to the grand narrative of awakening. No one is excluded. No one is forgotten. No one is less than absolutely essential to the whole. You find a bench at the edge of the village and sit down. The night is completely quiet now, except for the soft sounds of the loch lapping against its shores. Even those sounds seem to be coming from inside your own awareness, rather than from some external source. The boundary between inner and outer experience has become so thin. Animals seem to have easier access to the present moment than humans do. They live in the eternal now, without the overlay of mental commentary that so often separates people from direct experience. But even human mental commentary is part of the perfection when seen from the right perspective. The stories we tell ourselves about our experiences are themselves experiences to be included in the vast embrace of awareness. Thoughts about thoughts, dreams within dreams, stories about stories, all of it the play of consciousness with itself, like a cosmic game of peekaboo. The cat begins to dream. Its paws twitch, its whiskers move, its eyes dart beneath closed lids. What does a cat dream about? Mice and birds and warm spots in the sun? Or does feline consciousness explore realms that human imagination can barely fathom? Does it dream of being human, the way humans sometimes dream of being animals? Does it know that it is dreaming, or does the dream seem completely real until the moment of waking? These questions lead to deeper ones. What is the relationship between sleeping dreams and waking dreams? Between individual consciousness and universal consciousness? Between the stories we tell and the reality they point toward? The Kelpie stories were dreams in a sense. Collective dreams that carried truth too important to be confined to ordinary language. Maybe all myths are dreams that the culture is having about itself. Ways that collective consciousness processes its own deepest longings and fears and insights. The Kelpie dreams of Scotland represent the land itself trying to understand its relationship with the waters that define it. The human communities trying to work out their connection to forces larger than individual will. And maybe individual dreams are the psyche's way of participating in this larger dreaming. Personal myths that connect with universal themes. Private stories that reflect public truths. Solo journeys that contribute to the collective adventure of awakening. You continue stroking the cat's fur and feel its dreams flowing through your fingers, or perhaps your own dreams flowing into its sleeping mind. The boundary between separate consciousness dissolves in the gentle rhythm of breath and heartbeat and purr. You are dreaming the cat is dreaming you. Both are being dreamed by something infinitely larger and more intimate than either. The night deepens, but your alertness remains crystal clear. This is not ordinary wakefulness, with its slight tension and longings feel completely understandable but somehow quaint. Like childhood concerns viewed from the perspective of adulthood. Who were you before you heard your first Kelpie story? Who were you before you began seeking something you could not name? Who were you before you started the journey that led to this moment of recognition? The questions seem to point backward through time, but actually they point deeper into the timeless present, where all experience arises. You were always this awareness in which questions and answers appear, always this space in which seekers and the sought dance their eternal dance. Always this consciousness that dreams of being someone who could wake up to consciousness. The journey was real, but it happened within a context that was never actually absent. This paradox no longer creates confusion. It simply rests as one more expression of the mystery celebrating itself. Like the Kelpie appearing as both real creature and mythical symbol simultaneously. Like water being both H2O and the sacred element that connects all life. Like stories being both entertainment and transmission of the deepest truth. The cat stretches and opens its eyes, looks directly at you for a moment with the profound gaze that only cats seem capable of. Then it stands, arches its back, and walks away, with the dignified gait of someone who has important business elsewhere. The brief communion is complete. The blessing has been exchanged. The recognition has passed between you like a secret handshake. You remain on the bench as the night continues to unfold around you. Time moves differently now, not as a river flowing from past to future, but as an ocean in which all moments exist simultaneously. Past and future become just other directions in the infinite space of now. Memory and anticipation become just more experiences arising in the eternal present. The Kelpie stories exist in this eternal present too, not as things that happened once upon a time, but as eternal patterns that are always available for recognition. The mythic dimension of existence that intersects with ordinary life at every moment. The magical that permeates the mundane without in any way conflicting with it. Children understand this naturally. They live in a world where stuffed animals have personalities, where invisible friends are real companions, where the same bathtub can be an ocean full of pirate ships. Peoples have always known that consciousness extends far beyond human brains, that intelligence operates at every level of natural organization, that even apparently inanimate objects participate in patterns of relationship and communication that resemble what we call awareness. The Kelpie stories anticipated these discoveries by thousands of years. They assume from the beginning that water has its own kind of consciousness, that landscapes have their own forms of memory, that the natural world is alive with intelligence that humans can learn to communicate with if they approach it with proper respect and sensitivity. This intelligence surrounds you now as you sit in the darkness. The water consciousness that moves through the loch and connects it to all other waters. The tree consciousness that networks through root systems and fungal webs. The stone consciousness that remembers the entire history of geological formation. The star consciousness that guides migrations and influences the subtle rhythms of life on Earth. All of it available for relationship if you know how to listen. All of it willing to teach if you are humble enough to learn. All of it already in communion with you through the deeper layers of your own being that you usually do not notice. The Kelpie was never just a creature in the water. It was the water's way of reaching out to human consciousness, a bridge between different forms of intelligence, an invitation to expand your sense of who and what you are in relationship with, a reminder that you are not alone in a universe of dead matter, but embedded in a cosmos of living awareness. This awareness expresses itself through you now, as naturally as it expresses itself through the flowing water or the shining stars. Your thoughts are movements of cosmic intelligence. Your emotions are the universe feeling itself. Your actions are the world exploring its own possibilities through human form. But this is not a special condition that you have achieved. It is the natural state that was always present, but temporarily obscured by the belief in separation. Like the sun that seems to disappear behind clouds but is actually always shining. Like the ocean that seems to be divided into waves but is actually one continuous body of water. The obscuration was never real, just as the separation was never real. There was only the play of consciousness with itself, the eternal hide-and-seek game between awareness and its own infinite creativity. The cosmic joke that has no one to get up. The laughter feels like champagne bubbles rising through your entire body, effervescent joy at the discovery of what you never actually lost. Celebration of the homecoming that never required any travel. Recognition of the treasure that was always in your own backyard, buried not in the earth, but in the very awareness that was looking for it. This is the laughter of the awakened, not cruel or mocking, but infinitely gentle. The tender amusement of love discovering itself everywhere it looks, the quiet delight of mystery recognizing its own face in every mirror. The soft chuckle of existence enjoying its own elaborate game of pretend. The laughter subsides into a smile that seems to come from the very core of being. A smile without object or reason, just the natural expression of contentment that needs nothing to complete it. The smile of the Kelpie itself, perhaps, as it watches consciousness play hide-and-seek with itself through endless stories and myths and recognitions. A breeze stirs the night air and brings the scent of water and growing things. The fragrance of life itself, complex and simple at the same time. Dozens of different plants contributing their unique essences to the mixture, earth and stone adding their mineral notes, the loch itself offering the clean smell of deep water under starlight. Each scent is perfect and distinct, yet all blend into a symphony of fragrance that could only exist through their collaboration. Like the Kelpie stories themselves, each tradition contributing its own flavour, while participating in a larger narrative that no single culture could create alone. The myth belongs to everyone, because it emerges from the universal human encounter with mystery. But even saying it emerges from human encounter is too narrow. It emerges from the encounter between all forms of consciousness, the dialogue between water and land that shapes every shoreline, the conversation between sky and earth that creates weather, the eternal exchange between known and unknown that drives all exploration and discovery. You are part of this conversation, have always been part of it. Your human life is the universe talking to itself through the particular instrument of your nervous system and personal history. Your thoughts and feelings and experiences are notes in the cosmic symphony. Your journey to recognition is the cosmos breathing out, like waves rising and falling, like thoughts appearing and dissolving. All the apparent opposites are recognized as complementary aspects of the same unified dance. The path winds along the water's edge and then turns inland through a grove of ancient trees. Their branches arch overhead like the vaulted ceiling of a natural cathedral. Moonlight filters through the leaves and creates patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. Each step forward is also a step deeper into the sacred space that is always present but not always recognized. The trees seem aware of your passage, not in the way humans are aware, with focused attention and analytical thinking, but with the deep, slow awareness of beings whose consciousness operates on completely different timescales. They have stood in this place for decades, some for centuries. They have watched the seasons cycle countless times. They have felt the rhythm of the earth's breathing through their roots. What stories could these trees tell if they spoke in human language? What have they witnessed in their decades or centuries of silent observation? The daily dramas of forest life, the larger cycles of growth and decay, the subtle changes that mark the passing of years, the even subtler changes that mark the evolution of consciousness itself. But perhaps they do speak, just not in sounds that human ears can easily recognize. The rustling of leaves in the wind, the creaking of branches under their own weight, the soft sound of bark expanding and contracting with temperature changes, all of it communication, all of it the forest talking to itself about its own experience of being alive. The Kelpie stories speak in a similar way, not directly, but through symbol and metaphor and the resonance they create in receptive hearts. They communicate truths too deep for ordinary language by awakening the capacity for deeper listening. They teach, not through information, but through transformation. They point not to concepts, but to recognition. You pause beside a particularly ancient oak, whose trunk is so massive it would take several people holding hands to encircle it. The bark is deeply grooved and scarred by centuries of weather and the small adventures of the creatures who make their homes in its crevices. Moss grows in the protected areas. Tiny ferns have found footing in the accumulated soil of its deepest furrows. This tree is an entire substance, the invisible communication with soil organisms and atmospheric gases. The tree as a being that mediates between earth and sky, between the underground realm of roots and the aerial realm of branches and leaves. This is what the Kelpie does in the realm of consciousness. It mediates between the depths and the surface, between the unknown and the known, between the wild and the civilized, between the ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding. It serves as a bridge, a translator, a means of communication between realms that might otherwise remain forever separate. Your hand on the bark becomes a point of communion, not just between human and tree, but between different forms of consciousness, learning to recognize each other. The tree's ancient patience, meeting your newly awakened recognition. Its deep-rootedness, supporting your growing understanding. Its steady presence, witnessing your integration of truth. You rest your forehead against the bark and close your eyes. The tree's presence fills your awareness, not as something external to yourself, but as another face of the same consciousness that you are. another expression of the same life force, another note in the same infinite symphony. In this moment of contact, stories arise unbidden, not thoughts exactly, but impressions that feel like memories. The tree is a sapling, vulnerable and tender, finding its place in the forest community. Its gradual growth over decades, learning to reach toward light while sending roots deeper into earth. The storms it has weathered, the seasons it has witnessed, the countless creatures that have lived and died within the sphere of its influence. But deeper than these stories is a quality of being that has no narrative. The tree's simple, profound presence, its complete acceptance of its place and role in the larger ecosystem, its patience with the slow cycles of growth and change, its trust in the intelligence that guides all natural processes. This quality begins to permeate your own being, not as something borrowed from the tree, but as something recognized in yourself. The same patience, the same trust, the same acceptance of your place in the larger ecosystem of consciousness, the same willingness to be exactly what you are, while remaining open to whatever wants to emerge through you. You open your eyes and step back from the tree, but the communion continues. The recognition once established does not end. It simply becomes part of the background of being, like the way you continue. Fragrance of crushed grass and earth. At the center of the meadow stands a single standing stone. Ancient and weathered, its surface carved with symbols so old they predate written language. Celtic spirals, cup and ring marks, patterns that seem to shift and change depending on the angle of observation. This is a marker stone, a sign that this place has been recognized as sacred for thousands of years. You approach the stone and run your fingers over its carved surface. The symbols feel familiar, though you have never seen them before. They speak to something deeper than cultural knowledge, something in the bones, something in the blood. The genetic memory of ancestors who understood the relationship between stone and sky, between earth and water, between human consciousness and the larger consciousness that moves through all things. This stone was placed here by people who knew the Kelpie not as folklore, but as living reality, who understood that certain places serve as portals between ordinary and extraordinary experience, who recognized that consciousness is not confined to human brains, but flows through the entire landscape like underground rivers connecting distant springs. The symbols on the stone are not decorations, they are maps, directions for navigating the invisible territories of awareness, guides for finding the hidden pathways that connect all things, instructions for remembering what most people forget, that the world is alive and aware and always ready to enter into relationship with those who approach it with proper understanding. You sit at the base of the stone and lean back against its ancient solidity. The night sky stretches overhead in its full glory, the Milky Way clearly visible now that you are away from the village lights. Billions of stars, arranged in patterns that have guided travelers for millennia. The same stars that shone on the people who erected this stone. The same constellations that inspired the first tellings of the Kelpie stories. How many people have sat in this exact spot over the centuries? How many have looked up at these same stars and wondered about their place in the vast scheme of existence? How many have felt the call of mystery and followed it to whatever recognition awaited them? The stone holds the memory of all these encounters, not in any way that archaeology could detect, but in the subtle field of consciousness that accumulates around places where deep recognition occurs. Sacred sites become sacred not because of what happens there once, but because of what happens there repeatedly over long periods of time. What lies beyond the veil of ordinary perception? This is why the old stories often locate their crucial events at specific geographical features: sacred groves, ancient stones, hidden locks, mysterious caves. These places really do serve as portals between worlds. Not because they are inherently different from other places, but because they have been recognized and honored as such for so long that they have become powerful focal points for the kind of consciousness that makes such recognition possible. The Kelpie stories were not just tales told around cottage hearths. They were living maps that guided people to actual places where encounters with mystery were most likely to occur. The stories and the landscape worked together to create opportunities for the direct experience of what the stories pointed toward. But now you understand that every place is potentially such a portal. Every moment is potentially such an opportunity. The recognition you have achieved here by this ancient stone is the same recognition that is always available everywhere. The sacred is not confined to traditionally sacred sites. It is the ever-present nature of existence itself, waiting to be noticed by anyone who learns to see with the eyes of the heart. A meteor streaks across the sky, leaving a brief trail of fire in its wake, here and gone in a few seconds, but somehow perfect in its momentary brilliance. A reminder that everything in form is transient. Everything appears and disappears in the space of awareness that never appears or disappears. Everything comes and goes in the consciousness that neither comes nor goes. You are that consciousness, have always been that consciousness. The stone is that consciousness appearing as ancient mineral stability. The stars are that consciousness appearing as distant fires of nuclear fusion. The meadow is that consciousness appearing as a community of grasses and flowers and small creatures, all different forms of the same formless essence, all unique expressions of the same unified being. The meteor's brief trail fades, but its message remains. Beauty does not depend on permanence. Meaning does not require duration. Truth can flash into recognition and completely transform understanding in a single instant. The Kelpie stories worked the same way, brief encounters with mystery that left permanent changes in the hearts that received them. You close your eyes and feel the full experience to be understood. The awareness that recognizes itself through thought is the same awareness that recognizes itself through sensation and emotion and all the other movements of consciousness. Nothing is excluded from this recognition. Nothing is rejected as unworthy or unspiritual or insufficiently pure. The Kelpie itself was often described as deceptive and dangerous, but even these qualities were recognized as aspects of the sacred power that moves through all natural processes, the force that can create and destroy with equal facility, the energy that is neither good nor evil but simply creative in ways that exceed human categories. You open your eyes and look up at the stars again. Each point of light represents a sun that may have its own family of worlds. Some of those worlds may harbour their own forms of life, their own expressions of consciousness, their own stories about the relationship between individual awareness and cosmic mystery. What would the Kelpie stories look like on a water world orbiting a distant star? How would beings with completely different sensory apparatus and cultural history approach the same fundamental questions about the nature of reality? Would they create myths about the dangerous beauty of consciousness? Would they tell stories about the transformative encounter with their own deeper nature? The questions expand your perspective beyond even the cosmic scale. If consciousness is truly universal, if awareness is the fundamental nature of existence itself, then the Kelpie story is being told simultaneously in countless variations throughout the universe. Every sentient being that has ever wondered about its true nature is participating in the same recognition that you have achieved. Every moment of awakening anywhere contributes to the awakening of the whole. This thought fills you with a love so vast it seems to encompass not just this planet, but all possible worlds, all possible forms of life, all possible expressions of consciousness, exploring its own infinite nature. The Kelpie swims not just in the lochs of Scotland, but in the ocean of being that underlies all existence. The story of recognition plays out not just in human hearts, but in every corner of the cosmos where awareness discovers itself. You stand and place your hand one more time on the ancient stone, a gesture of gratitude, an acknowledgement of the role this place has played in your understanding, a recognition that you are now part of its continuing story. Your moment of realization here will contribute your own being, inviting you to remember what you are. As you walk, you feel the night beginning to soften toward dawn. Not yet visible on the horizon, but something in the quality of the darkness suggests that change is coming. The eternal cycle of light and dark, day and night, sleeping and waking, forgetting and remembering. All of it the play of consciousness with itself, all of it perfect, exactly as it is. The Kelpie stories will continue long after you are gone from this particular form. They will evolve and adapt and find new expressions for new times and new audiences. But their essential message will remain the same. The invitation to recognize what you actually are. The call to remember your true nature. The promise that what you seek is what you are, has always been what you are, could never be anything other than what you are. This is the story that never ends because it is not really a story at all. It is the direct recognition of reality recognizing itself through every apparent individual. It is the awakening that is always happening now, because it is the nature of awareness to be aware. It is the homecoming that never requires travel, because there is nowhere to go and no one to go there. You carry this recognition with you as you walk, not as knowledge gained, but as truth remembered, not as achievement earned, but as birthright claimed, not as destination reached, but as journey completed, by discovering there was never anywhere to go. The Kelpie smiles from the depth of consciousness and sinks back into the silence from which all stories emerge and to which they all return. The myth dissolves into the reality it was always describing. The symbol disappears into the truth it was always pointing toward, and you walk on through the softening night, carrying the ancient wisdom forward into whatever new forms it will take in the world that awaits. The story continues because the story never ends. The recognition spreads because recognition is the nature of awareness itself. The Kelpie lives because you are the Kelpie, have always been the Kelpie, swimming in the infinite waters of your own deepest being. The first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon as you make your way back toward the village. Not the bright orange of sunrise, but the subtle greying that suggests night's hold is beginning to loosen. The stars fade gradually, one by one, until only the brightest remain visible in the lightening sky. Venus hangs low. Begin their dawn chorus. A blackbird starts the concert with its liquid notes. Then a robin joins in with its cheerful trill. Soon, dozens of voices weave together in the daily celebration of returning light. But you hear it now as more than birdsong. You hear it as consciousness greeting itself in the mirror of a new day. The houses begin to stir. Lights appear in kitchen windows. The smell of wood smoke rises from chimneys as people kindle their morning fires. Coffee brewing, bacon sizzling, the comfortable sounds of families beginning their daily routines. All of it precious in its ordinariness, all of it sacred in its simplicity. A woman emerges from her cottage to collect eggs from the chicken coop in her garden. She moves quietly so as not to wake the rest of her household. Her bare feet make no sound on the dew-wet grass. She speaks softly to the hens as she gathers their gifts, thanking them for their generosity. A small ritual of gratitude that connects her to the ancient human relationship with the creatures that sustain us. You watch from a respectful distance, but she senses your presence and looks up. For a moment your eyes meet across the garden fence. She nods and smiles, a simple acknowledgement of shared humanity in the early morning hour. Neither of you speaks, but something passes between you. Recognition of the quiet sanctity of dawn. Appreciation for the privilege of witnessing another day's beginning. She continues with her tasks and you continue your walk, but the brief exchange stays with you. Another reminder that awakening is not separate from ordinary life, but woven through its most common moments. The sacred is not hidden in extraordinary experiences, but revealed in the most familiar activities, when they are approached with full presence. The path leads you past a small church whose bell tower rises above the surrounding cottages. The building is dark now, but in a few hours it will fill with people seeking connection with something greater than themselves. They will sing hymns and recite prayers and listen to words about mystery and meaning. Some will find comfort, others inspiration. A few may touch the edges of the recognition you have achieved. The church represents humanity's institutional attempt to preserve and transmit the deepest truths. Sometimes successful, sometimes not, but always well-intentioned. The Kelpie stories served a similar invitations and preparation. They plant seeds that can flower into direct recognition when the right conditions arise. They preserve the possibility of awakening across generations and cultures. They keep alive the memory that there is more to existence than surface appearances suggest. You pass the church and continue toward the loch where your night's journey began. Full circle, but at a completely different level of understanding. Like a spiral that returns to the same coordinates at a higher altitude. Like a musical theme that repeats with richer harmonics and deeper resonance. The water comes into view just as the sun breaks the horizon. The first rays of direct sunlight turn the loch's surface into a mirror of molten gold. The mist that cloaked it in mystery during the night now rises in gentle spirals, revealing the clarity that was always present beneath. The same water, the same shore, but transformed by the light of a new day and the light of recognition. You sit on the same stone where you began your evening contemplation. The rock is still cool from the night, but you can feel the warmth of the sun beginning to touch its surface. In an hour it will be comfortably warm. By midday it will radiate heat back into the air. The eternal cycle of receiving and giving, absorbing and sharing, taking in and offering out. This is how awakened beings function in the world. They receive the light of recognition and radiate it back into the environment through their presence and actions. Not through preaching or teaching in any formal sense, but simply by being what they are, like stones that absorb sunlight all day and release it gently through the cooling hours of darkness. A duck family paddles past, the mother leading with her ducklings following in perfect formation. They move with such natural grace, such effortless cooperation. The mother knows where she is going. The young ones trust her guidance completely. No anxiety about the destination, no second-guessing the route, just simple movement through their liquid medium toward whatever needs to be accomplished. You watch them disappear around a bend of the shoreline and feel a deep appreciation for the wisdom of instinct, the intelligence that operates below the level of thought, the knowing that guides without explanation, the trust that moves forward without guarantee. These qualities are not limited to animals. They are available to human beings who learn to listen to the deeper currents of wisdom. The Kelpie stories often spoke of the intelligence that brought you to recognition without your having to figure out how to get there. Trust in the process that is always unfolding, always guiding, always working toward the awakening of all beings. The sun climbs higher, and the mist continues to clear. Details of the far shore become visible that were hidden in the darkness. Rocky outcroppings, stands of pine trees, a small stone cottage with smoke rising from its chimney. The same landscape that was present all night, now revealed in the clarity of daylight. But your eyes see it differently now. Everything appears exactly as it is, while simultaneously being transparent to its deeper nature. This is the gift of awakened perception. The ordinary world does not disappear or become something else. It reveals what it has always been, but was not previously recognized as being. Sacred not because it points to something sacred elsewhere, but because it is the direct manifestation of the sacred here and now. Divine not because it reflects divinity, but because it is divinity appearing in these particular forms. A fish jumps in the center of the loch, sending concentric circles spreading toward the shore. Just a fish feeding on insects near the surface. Nothing extraordinary by ordinary standards. But in your current state of awareness, it seems like a perfect teaching about the nature of existence, the disturbance that creates patterns, the action that generates consequences, the individual movement that affects the whole. You are that fish. Your recognition creates ripples that spread far beyond your ability to track them. Your awakening affects the field of consciousness in ways both subtle and profound. Every moment of clear seeing contributes to the collective awakening. Every recognition makes recognition easier for others. Every being that wakes up makes it more likely that others will wake up too. This is not a burden but a natural function. Like flowers that cannot help but release their fragrance. Like candles that cannot help but shed their light. Like springs that cannot help but offer their water to anyone who comes to drink. Awakened beings cannot help but radiate the peace and clarity they have discovered. It happens not through effort, but through the natural overflow of what they have become. The village begins to show more signs of life as the morning progresses. Children's voices calling to each other as they play in their gardens. Adults greeting neighbors as they begin their daily work. Dogs barking in friendly conversation. Greater whole. Some of the villagers notice you sitting by the water as they go about their morning routines. A few nod or wave in friendly acknowledgement. Others simply smile as they pass. No one seems concerned by your all-night vigil or your somewhat otherworldly presence. Small communities often have an intuitive understanding of the need for solitude and contemplation. They respect the mystery of individual spiritual process, or perhaps they sense something of what you have discovered and offer their silent blessing. Perhaps some of them have had their own encounters with the deeper dimensions of existence. Perhaps the Kelpie stories are not just folklore to them, but living possibilities they recognize and honor. Perhaps rural communities, living close to the natural world, maintain easier access to the mysteries that urban life often obscures. A fisherman launches his small boat from a dock further down the shore. He rows out onto the still water with practiced strokes, barely creating a wake. His movements are economical and purposeful. No wasted energy, no hurried anxiety. Just the calm competence of someone who has learned to work in partnership with the element that supports him. You watch him anchor his boat and begin to fish. The simple ritual of casting and waiting. Not forcing the fish to bite, but creating the conditions, and then allowing whatever wants to happen to happen. Patience and skill working together. Action and receptivity in perfect balance. This becomes another teaching about the spiritual life, about how awakening actually occurs, not through forcing or grasping or demanding results, but through creating the right conditions and then allowing the natural intelligence of consciousness to do its work. Like fishing, like farming, like any activity that requires cooperation with forces larger than individual will. The Kelpie stories encoded this wisdom in their warnings about trying to capture or control the water spirits. Those who approached with greed or aggression usually met with disaster. Those who came with respect and humility often found themselves blessed. The mystery responds to the quality of consciousness we bring to our encounter with it. A church bell rings across the water, calling the faithful to morning service. The sound carries clearly in the still air, sweet and resonant. Some of the villagers will answer this call, seeking connection with the divine through communal worship and ancient ritual. How transformation actually works. Not as a single dramatic event, but as an ongoing process of integration. The recognition keeps deepening. The understanding keeps expanding. The embodiment keeps maturing. What seemed complete last night reveals new depths this morning. What felt final turns out to be a new beginning. You stand and stretch, feeling the stiffness that comes from sitting still for so long. But even this physical discomfort is included in the vast embrace of acceptance. Just another sensation arising in awareness, another wave in the ocean of experience, another movement in the dance of consciousness with itself. The sun is well up now, warming the air and beginning to evaporate the dew from the grass. The day is officially beginning. Soon the loch will be busy with boats and swimmers and tourists, seeking their own encounter with Scotland's mysterious waters. The cycle of human activity will overlay the eternal rhythm of natural processes, but none of this will disturb the essential peace you have discovered. The recognition once achieved does not depend on external circumstances for its continuity. It exists prior to all conditions, while including all conditions. Like the sky that remains spacious and clear whether it holds clouds or sunshine, storms or stillness. You begin walking back toward the village centre, ready to engage with whatever the day brings, ready to serve the recognition through whatever activities arise, ready to be the Kelpie consciousness in human form, swimming through the world while never forgetting the infinite depths from which you have emerged. The story continues, the myth evolves, the ancient wisdom finds new expressions, and consciousness keeps recognizing itself through every being willing to dive deep enough to touch the source from which all stories emerge and to which they all return. The Kelpie waits in those depths, patient as water itself, ready to greet the next seeker who follows the call of mystery to its ultimate resolution, ready to offer the same recognition that has been offered for thousands of years, ready to reveal the same truth that each generation must discover for itself, that what we seek is what we are, has always been what we are, could never be anything other than what we are. This is the end that is no end, the completion that opens infinite new possibilities, the homecoming that launches the real adventure of living as what you have always been, but now consciously know yourself to be. The Kelpie disappears into its own recognition. The story dissolves, awakening understanding we will never witness, serving the great work of consciousness coming to know itself completely through every possible form and experience. The sun shines on the loch and everything is exactly as it should be, has always been and will always be, perfect in its imperfection, complete in its incompleteness, whole in its apparent fragmentation, one appearing as many, playing the endless game of hide and seek with itself, finding infinite joy in the discovery of what was never actually lost.